Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. We will go ahead and get going here in just about a minute. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar, Creating Reliable ITS Communication Networks with Actelis. My name is Connor, and I will be your moderator. Before we get going, a few housekeeping things I wanted to run through real quickly. All phone lines are muted, so if you have questions, please go ahead and use the chat feature within your GoToWebinar toolbar. Today's presentation will last about 30 minutes or so, which will give us time for questions at the end. By attending today's webinar, you are eligible to earn TARP points through IMSA. For those of you who provided your number during the registration process, Western Systems will go ahead and take care of that submission for you. And lastly, today's webinar will be made available for you to view anytime on demand. And to do so, you can just visit the Western Systems website and scroll to the Resources tab. Okay, with the housekeeping out of the way, I am excited to introduce today's presenter, Tony Brodnick, Territory Manager for Western Systems. Tony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Connor. Well, good morning, everyone. I believe many of you attending this webinar are familiar with Western Systems, that we sell and support innovative traffic solutions in California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Now, today's webinar will introduce a very innovative product from Actelis Networks. Actelis was founded in 1998, is a private US company based in Fremont, and their specialty is with VDSL-based Ethernet first mile products. Their VDSL technology overcomes the challenges of electromagnetic interference, crosstalk, and transients to make copper a highly reliable, high performance transmission media. This can save money by utilizing your existing copper infrastructure for interconnect between intersections. So there's a standard for broadband over copper, and that's called G.SH-DSL. So that's the symmetric digital subscriber line. It's a data communications technology for equal transmit and receive data rate over copper telephone lines. That's why it's called symmetric. It has very little susceptibility to outside interference. Now, some manufacturers out there are using VDSL, which is a higher frequency technology, but tends to have higher susceptibility to interference. It works reliably on installations with short runs. There's a lot of latency with the technology, so video quality tends to be poor on longer runs. But if transmitting data, it does a lot better because data can be retransmitted through the IP protocols. So what's the difference between that and the Actelis technology? Well, it's very mature, and it creates an Ethernet high-speed link by logically bonding multiple copper pairs. And it's field proven in hundreds of networks. So the technology that they have constantly monitors the lines for best throughput and checks the condition of the pairs. It also uses what's called adaptive reselection. This means the sending of larger number of packets down to better performing pair. It will also alert you if a pair is starting to go bad. This error correction is very important because the electrical characteristics of copper cable changes both with distance and temperature. The Actelis technology also has patented crosstalk management and signal-to-noise ratio algorithms to ensure the best performance per pair. So here you see a 60 megabit high-speed link, and you have 4 pairs connecting in. Makes this connection highly resilient and highly available. And you'll also continue your transmission even if a pair is lost for some reason, or it goes bad through maybe high temperatures or other kind of interference that may come on. So let's talk about this bandwidth. So theoretically, you can get up to 15 megabits per pair. Now, the typical performance in live networks with 2 pairs is about 20 megabits per second at about 2,500 feet. That's quite a long run. And that reduces as you go longer. You get about 7 megabits at 10,000 feet. And with 4 pairs, if you are able to use 4 pairs, you get about 38 megabits at 2,500 feet, or 13.5 meg at 10,000 feet. So, 20, 30 megabits doesn't seem like a lot, but think about it. This is existing copper wire. And a typical video feed needs about 5 megabits. And so you should get very good video, with even just 5 megabits of data throughput. Now, the distance is the key here. 2,500 feet is a long distance when you consider that a typical Ethernet twisted pair segment can be no longer than 330 feet. So now this slide here highlights the key Actelis hardware and software products. And they have a lot more products than this, but these are the key ones that many customers are using. And we'll get into specific details on some of the next slides. So the first one, the aggregation switches, consider these as core switches. They support high-speed links, fiber connections, and point-to-point Ethernet connections. And then there's the switch options for copper or fiber interconnects and end station connectivity. And we'll get into each of these in the next slides. Then there's software for both configuration and management. The Meta Assist View, which is a standalone product that will install on your PC for configuration. And then there's the Meta Assist EMS, which is server-based and is for larger networks. So the aggregation platforms. So there's 2 here, but that are shown. The ML230, which is the top one, and the ML2300. These are modular. They're, as you can see, there's slots for different modules. And you can have termination points for 8, 16, 32, 64, and 256 copper pairs. And then to hand them off to other switches or routers or controllers via twisted pair of fiber, you have ports or slots that will accommodate these type of technologies. So here's a close-up of the ML230. You can see what I was talking about with the fiber SFPs. The top slot has 8 fiber SFPs and 2 Ethernet ports. And these bottom modules are for the high-speed links. And this takes a special type of cable that you would then go from the ML230 or 2300 to your punch down to tie in your high-speed links from your intersections. And these devices also support all the key protocols for redundancy and traffic flow. So now we'll get into detail on some of the switch options. The ML688 takes in copper pairs and allows them to be split in 2 directions. What they call this is drop and continue. It allows multiple nodes to be connected together over copper or a linear chain or ring configuration. And this is a very popular shelf mount unit. The ML698 is also a drop and continue, but this allows you to go either point to point or point to multi-point. And you can see from the pictures that each have 4 10-100 base T Ethernet interfaces and an optional 100-1000 base SFP port. And both of these devices are hardened units with a operating temperature range of -40 degrees C to 74 degrees C, which is 165 degrees Fahrenheit, built for the harsh environment of a traffic cabinet, and supports all the protocols for redundancy and traffic priority. This next slide shows the ML684D and the ML680DF. These are, I would say, the most popular DSL switches. Both are 8 ports, 6 10-100 Ethernet interfaces, and 2 fiber SFP ports. It's compact in-rail mount, environmentally hardened, fanless units, and you have drop and continue to multiple sites with redundancy protocols for spanning tree and redundant spanning tree protocols for ring type topologies. And it doesn't use very much power consumption. So let's take a little close-up of the unit. You can see the 6 ports for Ethernet connection. You have 2 ports for your HSL points that you connect into, drop and continue, 2 SFP ports, a console port for management. This particular one has redundant power supply configuration on the bottom right there, and alarms. So you have dry alarm contacts to connect to a door alarm or a water sensor or whatnot. Very flexible unit. Next, in the 600 series family is the 684 DTP. So this device is very similar to the previous ones, except it has a terminal server port in the bottom right there to connect terminal server for serial connections over Ethernet. So that's very useful for legacy devices that don't have, may not have an Ethernet port. This one also has 2 power over Ethernet ports, up to 60 watts per port. And the alarms port, redundant power supply features, HSL copper, and 10-100 Ethernet. Lastly, in the switch family that we're talking about today is the 514D. I really like this one. This probably came out maybe a few months ago, almost a year ago, and it's a 14-port switch. It has 10, 100, 1000 Ethernet interfaces. So this is a very good switch if you have a need in your cabinet for gig Ethernet interfaces. And has 4 100, 1000 base FX fiber SFPs, which if you have fiber infrastructure, you've got a lot of flexibility to go as a fiber hub or drop and continue for fiber optic connectivity. And is fanless and has redundant power capabilities. And the switch supports all the protocols for redundancy and spanning tree and so forth. Oh, one other thing that this does have that they don't have any other switches is a Cisco-like, command-like interface. So if you're familiar with configuring Cisco switches and routers, you have a very similar command line interface for doing quick configuration changes. So this slide shows a topology view with an aggregate switch connecting to a switch network, drop and continue copper with fiber through these 680 DFs and 684s, or a direct connect through copper to a switch, a direct connect to fiber, or a connect with a fiber redundant ring, then from there going to copper point to point. So you can see from this slide that the Actelis offering is very flexible depending on what you may have in your infrastructure. You may start off with maybe just copper interconnects. Maybe you have a fiber plan in place that goes into maybe a new development. Then you can easily accommodate that and the existing copper with the different products that Actelis offers. So how do you configure and manage an Actelis network? Well, as I mentioned previously, there are 2 software packages available to troubleshoot and configure the Actelis products. The MetaAssist View and MetaAssist EMS, which is Element Management System, and that one is sold by license. The MetaAssist View is a standalone package that is no charge. It's used to connect directly to an Actelis switch to configure the main switch parameters and individual ports. It also has some diagnostics capabilities with what they call a topology screen. It's very useful to help identify problems with your copper plant. This screen will contain a lot of information on each pair in relation to the signal to noise ratio reading at each point, the equivalent wire length of each pair, and attenuation of each pair with the error ratio. So this is very helpful for when you're doing troubleshooting. The MetaAssist Element Management System is licensed for a server and per node. So some of the key features of this software product is fault management for real-time reports of alarms. Resource management provides inventory and configuration details of all your switches in a network. Software control for upgrades and downgrades of the firmware, and configuration backup, which is very useful, backing up all configurations of each switch. Then kind of globally, you have a network tree view, topology map, and you can import Google Earth maps so that it just gives you a little easier view of where your switches are located within your agency. It also has what's called zero-touch provisioning. It will discover and provision a new unit inserted into the network. So you don't really even have to put in an IP address because the switches advertise back to the EMS automatically. And when it picks it up, then you could program it to download the config. So Actelis has hundreds of successful deployments in the US, and for that matter, even worldwide. And even a couple of these accounts are in my Northern California territory under my responsibility. Well, I went a little quicker than I expected on this. My dry run was over a half an hour, but I think you guys appreciate it. I'm not giving you 50 slides today, but I hope this presentation was informative and that you'll come away with a better understanding of how you can utilize the Actelis technology to solve specific connectivity challenges with the advantage of cost savings by utilizing existing copper infrastructure. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Connor to see if there are any questions.
All right, thanks, Tony. We'll get going on the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and use the chat feature within your GoToWebinar toolbar. Tony, while you were speaking, we did have a couple questions come in, so we can just go ahead and fire away with those. The first one is, how many U's in the ML230 aggregation switch?
Yeah, so that's a 2U high switch. That's the smaller of the two. The ML2300 is a 5U. So you may probably ask that maybe you had some limitations in your cabinet. The 230 is a good one for smaller networks.
Great. Next one we got here. How many years is the hardware warranty?
Actelis offers a 2-year warranty. And you might say, well, some manufacturers out there have a longer warranty, but one of my customers has switches in place that are operating just fine for over 8 years. So keep that in mind.
All right, next one here. Does Meta Assist EMS run on a server, and what operating system?
Yes, that is server-based, and that is a special license for the server, and it could run on either Windows Server 2009, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or Oracle Solaris. So it gives you a lot of options there, depending on what your IT expertise is in the server areas.
Great. Looks like this is the last one here. Does Western Systems perform installation and design of Actel switches?
Absolutely. We have many field techs that are qualified and do network design and installation, and can even even are experts in different server topologies too.
Great. That looks like all the questions we got today. So thank you, Tony, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, take care all. Thank you for joining.